Hi there, it's Mark here again, and welcome to this part 1 of my build guide for the Tamiya Manta Ray, re-released 2018 on the DF01 chassis. And without further ado, let's crack straight on with step 1, which is making up the rear differential and the prop joint. As you can see, I've got all the parts ready, and just put them onto the one-to-one diagram at the side there. Shows you every part that you need. Get those ready in advance. And we'll start off with the large bevel gear and put a bit of grease on the back of this. It's the ceramic grease that's provided with this kit. So yeah, apply a bit of grease, and then you've got one of these 9mm washers. Needs to go over there. Bit more grease on the top of the washer. Get your diff case and then just simply drop that into the centre. Okay, now I'm going to get a bit of grease on that. And get your star shaft, which is this, and then just what I do is push each of the prongs or the shafts into the tube. Make sure you get a nice coating of grease onto those, and then fit on your 3 small bevel gears like so. And then we've just got to drop that into the grooves that are in the case there, as you can see. And you've guessed it, more grease. Get your second large bevel gear, and you've guessed it again, and then pop that on top of the 3 gears there. Grease the back up. Your second 9mm washer, grease. Then your diff cover, you see it's got the 3 prongs there. They go into the 3 slots that the star shaft went into. You can only put it in one way because there are little lugs that locate. It can say it only goes in one way, and then you've got your 3 tiny little 2x8 tapping screws, and just get those done up. Be careful not to over tighten them because they are very, very small screws. So as you see here, it says bag A, parts bag A, which I've opened and put into this tub, and we should be able to complete the first 11 steps using just the parts in parts bag A. So that's the rear differential finished, but what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've built up the other one. For the front, they are exactly the same, so follow the same procedure. They're exactly the same, but if you're going to build this one now, you'll need to open up parts bag B because the parts for this are inside this parts bag. So to finish off, I've got the propeller joint. So you need this part here, which is MA24, MA13 circlip or E-clip, and what I do is just press down on the bench to get that fitted into place so it doesn't go flying off across the room. Nice and simple. You'll see here that it does show applying grease to this shaft, but I've purchased a full set of metal ball bearings for this kit, so I won't need to put that grease on there because I'm not going to be using any of these plastic bushings that came with the kit. So it's your 1150 bushing or the bearing that I've got here, and that goes on next like so. And then plastic part D10, which is this, which just sits over the end there. And then plastic gear G1 goes on the end of the rod with the flat there, and it goes on one way. And then your bushing or bearing, which is a little 850, and that just sits on the end. And that is step 1 complete. Step 2 is attaching the rear differential into the gear case, which is this part here, B7. Note the direction with the flat at the side there on the left. That just pops into the case. And then an 1150 bushing or bearing goes into the slots at the side. As you can see there, just drops in like so. Now that's in place, we can get some grease on this gear without getting it all over our fingers. Doesn't have to be on every tooth, it will kind of spread into place as it's used, if you know what I mean. Hold that in now with this plastic part B4, and you might be able to see, if I just hold that in the light there, I've put some grease on the mating surfaces just to keep any light, dust and sand out of this gearbox. So that just clips into place like that, and it shows here fitting with 3/10 screws. There's 4 of those, self-tappers, which are these. I'm not going to use those, I'm going to use these stainless steel hex head machine screws. I'm going to replace these where I can. Got a big bag of them here. They're cheap as chips and they won't rust, and they're much easier to work with the hex head. So that's 1 in there, 1 in there, and then 1 each side at the bottom like so. I'll just get those done up. And to finish the step, it's just this plastic part B1. It goes into those like 3 little holes there, that's held in place by another 3x10 screwed from the centre hole from underneath. Okay, and that's step 2 finished. Step 3 is attaching the pinion gear and the motor mount, and you'll see I'm going to go completely off course again here. A little tip: the stock plastic part B2, which is the mount for the motor, I've had experience of this before on the DF01 and the very similar chassis, the TA02, TA01. These break very easily. These kind of lugs here that you screw onto the chassis, they snap off. So a recommendation is to change that out for an aluminium one. This is a cheap one from Fast Tracks. You can see the number there. It does say TA01, as you can see, but as I said, they are very similar chassis. Also, this is the motor that comes with the kit. It's a stock Marbucci 540. I'm not fitting that. I have got an old vintage Fireball 21 turn modified motor. It does look a bit tatty, I know, but I have completely stripped it down and rebuilt it, and it runs as sweet as a nut. So this is going to power my Manta Ray. But obviously it does fit exactly the same as the stock motor. You get your cardboard motor plate, and that sits over like so. Get your pinion gear and then screw in tiny little grub screw. Obviously don't screw it in all the way because it's got to go over that motor shaft. You get plastic part B3, which is going to give us the gap, the distance to the actual pinion. Pop your pinion over the end of the shaft. As you can see, it butts up against that plastic part, and that gives you the right gap from the motor to the pinion, and just give that a good nip up, and then simply remove that plastic part. Get your motor mounts, and that goes over the top. And for the 21 tooth pinion, you want to use this hole at the end here and that hole at the other end there, and that's with two 3x6 machine screws. Okay, and it should look like that when you've done. On to step 4, which is attaching the motor to the gearbox. As you can see, it shows here note direction, so you've got that pointy bit there. It's got to be down this part of the gearbox, so like so, and you can see that those prongs fit into these two holes on the gearbox case, and you'll see it's a solid fit when it goes in. It shows here using the self tappers, but I'm using the hex screws that came with the gearbox mount. So simply do the 2 screws up, and that's the end of step 4. Step 5 is making up your spur gear and your idler gear. There's your spur gear. It's a piece of cake. Get your 30mm shaft and your 16 tooth drive gear, and just pop in an 850 bearing or bushing into the one end. Pop that over your shaft. You've got your G3 plastic cap. Just pops on the end, and then your spur gear locates on these teeth. As you can see, you can just push it in like that, nice and easy. An 1150 bearing goes in the other side on the pinion, and another G3 cap. And that's the one. Get the little idler gear, an 850 bearing goes in each side, then the 19mm shaft, a G3 cap on either side, and it's as easy as that. In step 6, we're going to pop those gears into the gearbox. The idler gear goes at the back there, meshes up with the differential gear underneath. The spur gear simply pops in there next, and it should engage with the pinion on the motor and the idler gear, and then the prop drive we made earlier fits in like so. There we go, and I'm just going to get some grease on all these teeth now. Okay, so we're all greased up, and now you can get part B6, which is the cap. And you can see again on the mating surfaces I've put some grease so it seals out the dust and the dirt. Just pop that on top, and it's just 3x10 screws, one in that hole, one there, and the last one goes in there. So get those done up, and that's the end of step 6. Step 7 is attaching the rear upper arms. I've already done the one. You've got this plastic part B5. Make sure you get it aligned in the right way, as it is with these lugs pointing backwards. There's the one arm fitted. It's the same for the other side. It does say put some grease on these step screws, but I'm not going to, because it just attracts the dust and grit, if you ask me. So that just goes through that hole there. 3mm washer over the back of the screw, and then make sure you get this aligned in the correct way. So you've got the openings in the plastic facing towards you. You've got a big hole one end and the smaller hole. This end is where we're going to put the screw into. Okay, and it should look like that when you're finished. In step 8 we're going to attach this to the gearbox, so it mounts up here as you can see, and again it's just 2 3x10 screws in each of these 2 holes. And to finish this step, just put a bit of grease onto the gearbox joints and get the long joints, and it goes in that hole into the differential and the short one into the left hand side. Step 9 is making up the rear lower arms. I've already made this first bit, the left hand side one, and it should end up looking like this. And that's using upright C11 for the left hand side, and it's C12 for the right hand side. It simply gets parts D12 and D13, and they just click together like that, and it's just 2 of these MA2 screws, one in there and one in there to hold the 2 halves together. And this plastic is very soft, so make sure not to over tighten these screws or you will strip out the threads. Just a very light nip up is all that's needed. And making sure it's aligned like it is in the diagram with these holes here to the back. Your C12 part fits in there like that with a 32mm screw pin, and do make sure just to put a light coating of grease on that, because these with any moisture just rust like crazy. So if anything else, it's just to stop them rusting rather than providing any kind of lubrication really. And that's step 9 finished. Step 10's got to be the easiest step ever. You just got to get each of your wheel axles, put on an 1150 bearing or bushing, and simply pop that into the wheel upright. Give it a push, and yeah, one in each of the uprights. What I do like to do though is to get a spare R-pin and just pop it through the hole in the wheel shaft, and that just stops it from falling out while you're finishing the assembly. Step 11, we're going to attach those rear arms. I've already done the one, as you can see. This is also a piece of cake. Both sides are the same. Obviously you need the right hand side and the left hand side because they're different. So I'll just show you fitting the left hand side. So first of all, we'll offer that up, 46mm screw pin with a little bit of grease on it, as I said before, and just feed that through. And then just give it a nip up. Get a long dog bone or drive shaft. It does say to put grease on the ends of these, but I'm going to use dry lubricant afterwards, so I don't make grinding paste with grease. So I'll just pop this in now, dry, and I'll lube it up later. Just need your step screw. Goes through the end of the top arm. 3mm washer on the back, and then that locates into the top hole in the upright. And it should move up and down freely and look like this when you're finished. Step 12, and time to open parts bag B if you haven't already, but like as you know, I already have, and I've completed step 12 and built up the front differential earlier. So it's straight on to step 13. Front gearbox part A5, again note the alignment and note the alignment of the diff with the solid part there to the left, and we just drop that in like so. Same as the rear, and it's an 1150 bushing or bearing, one dropped down each side like that. And then part 3, which is the cap, again with some grease on the mating surfaces, and that just goes on the top here. You see I did grease that diff up, and again it's just 4 3x10 screws that hold this cap in place. In those positions, when they're done up, that's the end of step 13. Step 14 is making up the counter gear and the other propeller joint. So yes, if we get this MB12 first, gear G2, 1150 bushing or bearing in one end, and the little 850 in the other end, just pop the bar in. It's the last 2 of the G3 caps, one on each end. So that's that done. Get your prop joint, and again we've got that MA13 4mm E-clip. Again, put it in place next to the flat part of the bar, and then I'll just push that down, and now that's on. 1150 bushnell bearing goes on the side with the kind of fork, and then push on plastic part D10. Gear G1 goes onto that flat like that, finished off with an 850 bearing or bushing. And that's step 14. In step 15 we're going to drop those gears into the gearbox, the front gearbox, and it shows you how they all line up here. So you simply drop that in there and your prop joint goes there. Just clicks into place and get some grease on all these gears. Okay, then all greased up, and again part A2, which is the lid or cap, we've greased up the mating joints or the mating surfaces on that again, and just pop this into place, and it's the 3x10 screws once again. 2, 3, and yeah, get those done up, and that's the end of step 15. Step 16 is the front damper stay, which is this part here, A4, and we're going to fit onto that the top arms. So I've already fitted the one, and you've just got to make sure that you copy the alignment here. The top arms, part D6, need to be facing with an angle towards the back. I'll just get this one screwed on and I'll show you. Simply a step screw through that bottom hole there. Make sure you've got the alignment of the damper stay correct. Then it's a 3mm washer. And as I said, make sure you get this the right way round. And we'll just screw that into there. And as you can see, it shows in the diagram, you've got this kind of a lug or a tab on the top of each of these arms, which is here and here. And if you look at it from the top, you can see that these arms are pointing backwards. Okay, so once you've done that, we can fix this onto the top of the front gearbox in this alignment. And that's simply 2 3x10 screws, one in that hole and one in the other side. So we'll just get those screwed up. And when that's fixed in place, you need to do is get your short gearbox joint, put a little bit of grease on it and pop that into the diff, and the long gearbox joint into the other side. On to step 17, which is making up the front uprights. There's not any part numbers on these, they're just loose in the box. So yeah, they're the red uprights, as you can see. I've already done the left hand side, and all you need to do is fit your MB4 5mm ball joint there into the outside of the 2 holes, and then pop in your wheel axle and a black O-ring. So just do this one the same. Again, note that they're opposite. Ball joint pointing down in the outside hole. Get your wheel axle, put in your bushing or your bearing, simply push that into the upright. Then you need your black 3mm O-ring and just pop that in, and the best way to get that seated is to get your dog bone and push it into place. Make sure it's seated right down at the bottom of that drive cup. And again, I'm just going to pop an R-clip through the hole to stop it falling out. And they should look like this at the end of step 17. Okay, step 18 is making up your front lower arms. Obviously there's a left and a right side. I've already done the left hand side, and it should end up looking like this. And in this step you have to be really careful and make sure you follow the layout exactly as it is in the diagram. Yeah, you'll see why in a minute. But yeah, so there's the left one. I'll just show you making up the right one. It's the same but in opposite. The way you put it together is opposite to this one. So D14 and D11 need to go together like so. Again, make sure you've got these 3 holes here pointed towards you like it is in the diagram. You've got 2 MA2 screws with a shoulder on to hold these 2 parts together. So they go in those holes there. Okay, so just snip those up. Don't over tighten them again because this plastic is very soft plastic. Again, make sure it's aligned as it is in the diagram. And then you need part C1, which is different to C13, so make sure you don't get them the wrong way around. They are different, as I said. And then you need the right upright as you made in the previous step, and that goes into the C hub like so, and we hold that in place with what I call kingpins. It calls them step screws in the instructions, but these are MB2s. And be very careful as you start inserting them and screwing them in, because there is a thread in this plastic part, in that red plastic part, so make sure you don't get it cross threaded. It will screw in quite easily when you get the thread lined up. So we'll get these nipped up. You can put a bit of grease on like it shows in the diagram there, and you can add a bit more tension as you screw these, a bit more torque, because this is the hard red plastic. Okay, with that done, we go into the lower arm like so at the bottom. Put a bit of grease on your screw pin, your 22mm long screw pin, and just nip that one up. So as you can see, you've got your two arms and they are the same but opposite, as you can see with those ball joints there, how they're located. That's how you need to build them. And now in step 19 we're going to attach those lower arms we've just made to the front gearbox. This can be a bit fiddly because you've got to get it all aligned up and hold both of the arms on with this one U bracket. So just try and line it up. It's going to be a bit difficult for me to show you on camera, but basically you get this bracket into those two holes there, then try and find the holes in the gearbox itself. And as you can see, pushed it through, and the pin should just poke out the other side, the other end. There you go. So yeah, this will be clamped on in a later stage, so don't worry about that. Then all you've got to do is get one of your dog bones, pop it through that C-hub and into the wheel axle, like so, and then all you need to do is get this arm located on the top of the C-hub, get your step screw, pop it through that hole in the top arm, pop on a 3mm washer. This is where it gets a bit fiddly. We've got to line that up and do up the step screw, and then repeat for the other side. So here it is completed, and if you have a good look at this you can see how it all is orientated, how everything lines up. And yeah, that's pretty much the front gearbox and suspension arms complete, to go with the rear gearbox and suspension arms that we did earlier. So as we've got to this point, I think it's a good point to call a close to this part of the build guide. I hope you enjoyed it, hope you found it useful, and obviously hope you join me in part 2. Thanks for watching, bye!